In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NBA games happening on March 29, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start. If you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Orlando Magic versus Toronto Raptors. There's something about Scotiabank Arena in late March that just feels different for the Toronto Raptors, and if you've been watching this team closely at home recently, you already know what I'm getting at. Toronto sits at 41-32 on the year, and they've been an absolute fortress on their own floor lately, riding a 4-game home winning streak into tonight's contest. What makes that streak even more impressive is the fact that they haven't lost a single game at home during the entire month of March. That's not some cherry-picked stat either. It speaks to a group that genuinely feeds off the energy inside that building when the lights come on and the crowd gets rolling. Now flip the page to the Orlando Magic, who come in at 39-34 and are fresh off one of the more brutal stretches any Eastern Conference contender has endured this season. Orlando just went through a 6-game losing skid, dropping contests to Atlanta, Oklahoma City, Charlotte, the Lakers, Indiana, and Cleveland before finally snapping it with a narrow win over Sacramento 2 nights ago. And here's where it gets tricky for the Magic, because 3 of those losses during that skid came on the road, which is exactly the situation they're walking into tonight. It's not just the losing streak that matters, it's the context behind it. Orlando is missing Franz Wagner, who hasn't suited up since early December due to a lingering high ankle sprain and has missed 40 of the team's last 44 games. That's their second leading scorer, their most versatile wing, their connective tissue on both ends of the floor, just gone. Anthony Black, who had carved out a real role in the guard rotation, has been sidelined for over 11 straight games now with an abdominal strain. Jonathan Isaac, their best rim protector and interior defender, has been out for 8 consecutive contests with a left knee sprain. That's 3 rotation-caliber players, all unavailable, all adding up to a Magic roster that is stretched thinner than it has been at any point this season. Meanwhile, Toronto has the luxury of relative health on their side. Emmanuel Quickley is a game-time decision with plantar fasciitis, and Colin Murray-Boyles left Friday's win over New Orleans with back spasms. But the core of this Raptors group, Brandon Ingram at 21.4 points per game, R.J. Barrett at 20.1, Scotty Barnes anchoring everything with his passing and defense, they're expected to be out there tonight. Jacoby Walter has been shooting the lights out from deep, connecting on 2.6 threes a game at an absurd 56.5% clip, and Jamal Sheed has stepped up beautifully when Quickley has been unavailable, giving this team a reliable floor general off the bench or in the starting 5. And honestly, the historical dominance Toronto holds over Orlando inside this building is kind of staggering. The Raptors have won 11 of their last 14 home games against the Magic, and this season's first meeting in Toronto went right down to the wire with a 107-106 Raptors victory. Orlando managed to grab the second meeting at home in January, 130-120, but that required a massive fourth-quarter explosion from Desmond Bane, who poured in 32 total that night, and a 17 for 34 shooting performance from deep as a team. That kind of offensive outburst is a lot harder to replicate when you're the road team in a hostile environment missing 3 key contributors. Toronto's defense has been underrated all year, ranking 9th in points allowed per game at 112.3, and Darko Rajakovic's group has consistently made life difficult for opponents inside their building. The Raptors are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6 home games and 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 games overall, which tells you this isn't some fluky hot streak but a genuine pattern of covering when it matters. Orlando, on the other hand, is just 1-4 against the spread in their last 5 meetings, with Toronto an dismal 3-11 straight up in their last 14 road trips to this building. Paolo Banchero has been carrying an enormous load, averaging 28.2 points over his last 5 outings, but even his brilliance has its ceiling when the supporting cast around him is this compromised. Bane gives you scoring punch, and Jalen Suggs is back after missing time with an illness, but asking this group to win outright in a building where they almost never win, while shorthanded, against a team playing some of their best home basketball of the year. That's a tall order. As our first pick for this matchup, the Toronto Raptors to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Now let's talk about the scoring environment we're expecting tonight, and this is where things get genuinely interesting because the recent trends from these two teams are pulling in wildly different directions. Toronto's games have actually been trending toward the lower side lately, with the under cashing in 4 of their last 5 contests overall. When these two specific teams have met historically, the under has connected in 6 of the Raptors' last 8 matchups against Orlando. So on paper, you might lean toward a quieter game, right? But here's the thing, Orlando's recent track record tells a completely different story. The over has hit in 9 of the Magic's last 11 games, and if you isolate their road games specifically, the over has cashed in 5 straight. Stretch it to Orlando's games against Eastern Conference opponents, and the over has gone 9 for 9. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern rooted in how this Magic team has been playing without its full roster. When you're missing Franz Wagner, Anthony Black, and Jonathan Isaac, your defense simply cannot hold up the way it needs to. Jamal Mosley's group has been leaking points at an uncomfortable rate during this stretch, and the offensive approach shifts too, because Banchero and Bane have to take on so much of the scoring burden that possessions become more isolation-heavy, which means more contested shots, more long rebounds, and more transition opportunities flowing back the other way. It creates this cycle where both teams end up with more possessions than you typically expect, and tonight's matchup has the ingredients for exactly that. Toronto averages 114 points per game on the season while Orlando puts up 115.7, and when you combine those two numbers, you're already sitting at 229.7, which is comfortably above where the market has this one pegged. The January meeting between these clubs in Orlando produced 250 combined points, with both teams shooting above 50% from the field. Now sure, the December meeting in Toronto was a grind that finished at just 213 total, but that was also a game where Toronto shot abysmally from deep and both teams played an unusually slow pace in a tight contest where every possession felt like a playoff game. Tonight's context is different. Orlando needs this win desperately for playoff positioning, sitting just 2 games back of the 6th-seeded Raptors and trying to avoid the play-in tournament entirely. Desperate teams push the pace, take more risks, and gamble on defense, all of which inflates scoring. Toronto's offense has been cooking at home, and with Barrett, Ingram, Barnes, and Walter all expected to be available, they have the firepower to exploit a Magic defense that's been hemorrhaging points without its best defenders. The Raptors scored 119 in their last home outing against New Orleans on 52% shooting, and they hung 139 on Chicago at Scotiabank Arena just 10 days before that. This building has been a launchpad for offensive production, and tonight against a team that has allowed the over to cash at a historic clip during their recent road stretch, the environment is ripe for points. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Sacramento Kings versus Brooklyn Nets. There's something quietly dangerous about a team with absolutely nothing to lose, playing on its own floor, with fresh legs, against a squad that just got off a plane from Atlanta the night before. Sacramento rolls into Brooklyn tonight carrying a 19-56 record, and honestly, that number tells you everything about how this season has gone for the Kings. The Nets aren't exactly living in luxury either, sitting at 17-57 on the year. These two franchises are practically roommates at the bottom of the NBA standings, which makes tonight's tiny line feel like a coin flip to most people, but we think there's a lean here that the market is slightly undervaluing. Sacramento is dealing with a laundry list of absences that would make any roster look like a G League squad. Domantas Sabonis is done for the year after tearing his meniscus. Zach LaVine had season-ending surgery on his right hand. DeAndre Hunter, who they just acquired from Cleveland back in February, is out for the season after eye surgery. Drew Eubanks, same story, done for the year with a torn thumb ligament. Keegan Murray and Russell Westbrook are both sidelined as well, and even guys like Nick Clifford, Killian Hayes, and Precious Achiuwa are all sitting on questionable designations tonight. That leaves DeMar DeRozan as the last real veteran standing in Sacramento, and while he's been playing some inspired basketball recently, dropping 41 on Utah and 33 against Orlando, you've got to wonder how much gas is left in a 36-year-old's tank when you look at the schedule. Here's the thing, and it's the real kicker. The Kings are on the fourth stop of a 5-game road trip, and they've lost every single game on this swing so far. They got blown out in Charlotte 134-90, lost a close one in Orlando 121-117, and just dropped another one last night in Atlanta 123-113. Tonight is the second leg of a back-to-back for Sacramento. Meanwhile, Brooklyn last played on Friday night in Los Angeles and had all of Saturday to rest, recover, and prepare for this one at Barclays Center. That rest advantage is enormous when you're talking about two teams this evenly matched on paper. We saw these two clubs meet just a week ago in Sacramento, and the Nets gave the Kings everything they could handle before losing by only 4. Rookie point guard Nolan Traore, the 19th pick in last year's draft, put up 17 points and 4 assists in that game, while fellow first-year guard Ben Seraph went off for 22. Now yes, Brooklyn will be without Michael Porter Jr., who's been their best player all season, averaging 24.2 points per game because of a hamstring injury. But the young core around Nick Claxton, Traore, Zaire Williams, and Noah Clowney, who just returned from a wrist injury on Friday, has shown it can compete. These are kids playing for roster spots and summer contracts, and there's a hunger that comes with that, especially on your home court. Coach Jordi Fernandez has been letting these rookies play through mistakes all season, and the result is a group that isn't afraid of the moment, even when the record doesn't reflect it. When you stack it all up, a rested Brooklyn team at home against a depleted Sacramento team stumbling through the worst road trip of its season on 0 rest, the gap between these two feels just a little wider than what the odds makers are suggesting. As our first pick for this matchup, the Brooklyn Nets to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. You know what happened the last time these two teams shared a basketball court? They combined for 248 points. That's not a typo. Sacramento won 126-122 in a game where both teams shot over 52% from the field and each knocked down 14 three-pointers. The Nets generated 60 points in the paint that night, and the Kings weren't far behind with 50 of their own. Brooklyn's bench poured in 65 points, while Sacramento's bench went even higher at 71. And all of that happened when the Kings actually had a couple more bodies available than they do tonight. The reason that game turned into a track meet is simple, and it hasn't changed one bit heading into this rematch. Neither of these teams plays defense. Sacramento comes in ranked 28th in the entire NBA in defensive rating, which is a polite way of saying they give up buckets to pretty much everyone they play. They also allow more opponent three-pointers per game than any other team in the league. That's a brutal combination when you're going up against a Brooklyn team loaded with young wings who love to fire from deep. Guys like Zaire Williams, Tyson Etienne, and even Traore when he's feeling it. From the other side, the Nets are a young squad that plays fast, pushes in transition, and doesn't exactly pride itself on getting stops. In that first meeting, Brooklyn scored 19 fast break points and committed only 7 turnovers all game. When a team takes care of the ball like that and runs the floor, possessions add up, and so do points. Sacramento still has DeMar DeRozan, who's been on an absolute tear lately, and Malik Monk, who went completely nuclear in the first matchup with 32 points on 7 of 13 from 3. Maxime Reynaud, the Kings' impressive rookie center, had himself a double-double with 22 and 10 in that same game. Devin Carter chipped in 16. Even with tired legs, the Kings have enough offensive firepower with those guys to keep the scoreboard moving all night. And Brooklyn's young players have been steadily improving their production as the season winds down. Josh Minott has averaged nearly 15 points over his last 8 appearances. And if he's cleared from his hip issue tonight, that's yet another bucket getter in the rotation. Both of these franchises have their eyes on lottery positioning, not defensive intensity. Nobody's locking down on possessions that don't matter for the postseason. When two teams with this little interest in stopping each other meet up, especially with the pace these young rosters love to play at, you get exactly what you got 7 days ago. A high-scoring, back-and-forth affair where both teams trade baskets like they're playing pickup at the park. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Houston Rockets versus New Orleans Pelicans. Houston rolls into the Smoothie King Center tonight sitting pretty at 44-29 on the season, 6th in the Western Conference, holding on to a 4-game cushion over Phoenix for the last guaranteed playoff spot. New Orleans sits at 25-50, losers of 4 straight, a franchise that most people wrote off before the turkey was even carved at Thanksgiving. On the surface, this looks like a mismatch you fast forward through. But here's the thing, the surface is lying to you. The Rockets' record is legit. Nobody's arguing that. Kevin Durant is still Kevin Durant, averaging north of 26 points a night in his first season with Houston after that blockbuster trade from Phoenix last July. The man just passed Michael Jordan on the all-time scoring list and climbed to 8th in career field goals made, which is borderline absurd for someone who's 37 years old. He dropped 25 and 10 assists just 2 nights ago in a win over Memphis, and he's had this Rockets group looking like a genuine contender for months. Alperen Sengun is putting up over 20 and nearly 9 rebounds. Reed Shepherd is knocking down close to 3 triples a game, and guys like Jabari Smith Jr. and Amen Thompson give this roster real depth. So yeah, Houston looks great, but travel with me for a second. This team is dead even at 19-19 on the road this year. That's a far cry from the juggernaut they look like at Toyota Center. And when you look at how they handle inflated numbers as a road favorite, it gets genuinely painful. Houston has failed to cover in 9 of their last 10 road games as a favorite. Stretch that out a bit further and it's 16 of their last 20 road games. Their overall against the spread record on the season is a brutal 30-43, and as favorites specifically, they're just 12-27. That's not noise. That's a pattern, and it's the kind of pattern that bettors ignore at their own expense. Now flip the script to New Orleans, because there's a real story here that the win-loss record doesn't tell. James Borrego took over as interim coach after Willie Green was fired 12 games into the season following a 2-10 start, and the culture shift has been palpable. Since the All-Star break, this Pelicans team has gone 10-7. They've cracked the top 7 in the league in scoring, field goal percentage, pace, three-point percentage, and assist-to-turnover ratio over that stretch. That's not a team mailing it in. Borrego has been fearless with his decisions, benching Jordan Poole during a cold stretch, shuffling rookies Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears between the starting lineup and the bench, and demanding accountability from everyone. And because New Orleans doesn't own their first-round pick this year, it went to Atlanta in the deal that brought Queen to town. There's literally zero reason to tank. Every game is an audition tape, and these guys are playing like it. Zion Williamson is putting up over 21 a game, and Borrego has been vocal about wanting him aggressive from the opening tip. Saddiq Bey has been quietly excellent, dropping a season-high 42 earlier this month and stringing together 5 straight home games with strong facilitating numbers. The wild card is Trey Murphy III, who's listed as questionable with a right ankle sprain after missing the last 2 games. Murphy leads the team in scoring at nearly 22 per game and is 6th in the entire NBA in threes made per contest. If he suits up, even on limited minutes, this offense looks completely different. If he sits, Jeremiah Fears and Jordan Hawkins step into bigger roles, and both have shown they can handle that. DeJounte Murray, who returned in late February after more than a year recovering from a ruptured Achilles, adds another layer of playmaking depth. Here's what really makes this interesting. The season series is knotted at 1 apiece. Game 1, right here in New Orleans, went to overtime with the Pelicans winning 133-128. Game 2 in Houston was decided by just 2 points, 107-105. Neither of those games was comfortable for the Rockets. Neither suggested any kind of easy margin. When you stack the closeness of those 2 meetings alongside Houston's terrible road covering trends, and then layer in the fact that the Pelicans have covered in 8 consecutive home games and 14 of their last 20 overall, you start hearing something pretty loud. As our first pick for this matchup, the New Orleans Pelicans to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Both of these teams like to push tempo, and that's where things get fun. Houston puts up 114.1 points per game this season, which is middle of the pack, but their defense has been elite, holding opponents to just 110.2 and ranking 4th in the entire NBA. You'd think that translates to a slower, grindier kind of game. And honestly, in a vacuum, maybe it does. But then you look at who they're walking into tonight. New Orleans scores 115.3 per game, ranking 16th in the league, and allows 119.3, which sits them at 25th defensively. The Pelicans play at the 11th the fastest pace in the NBA, and under Borrego since the break, they've been pushing even harder, running top 7 offensive numbers in almost every major category. This is a team that plays fast, shoots a lot, and doesn't exactly lock the door on the other end. When a team operates like that, it invites a track meet. And Houston, for all their defensive discipline, has shown a real willingness to run when the opportunity presents itself, especially with Thompson pushing the break and Durant pulling up in transition like he's playing pickup at Rucker Park. The head-to-head meetings this season paint a vivid picture. Game 1 went to overtime and produced 261 combined points. Game 2 landed at 212 in regulation, tighter but still relentless in terms of pace and shot volume. When you average those out, you get a baseline of nearly 237 combined across the series. And yes, the overtime obviously inflates the first one, but even the regulation game had both teams going at each other without taking a single possession off. New Orleans' defensive struggles have been well documented all season. They give up nearly 120 points a night and rank 25th in defensive rating. Borrego himself has said that defensive rebounding is the one issue that continues to undermine all the progress they've made elsewhere, and second chance points bleed into every game they play. That means extra possessions, extra shots, extra opportunities for the scoreboard to keep climbing. On the other side, Houston's defense can clamp down in stretches, but on the road this team doesn't always bring that same intensity, and their .500 road record is proof of that inconsistency. Durant and Sengun are going to get their buckets regardless of the building they're in. Shepard is going to let it fly from deep. And Smith Jr. alongside Tari Eason off the bench give the Rockets enough secondary firepower to keep any game moving. Over their last 10 games, the Pelicans have averaged 119.4 points and gone 6-4 in that span. That's a team that's figured out its offensive identity and isn't shy about letting it rip. When you put that kind of output against a Rockets team that's going to match shot for shot because they're scrapping to lock in their playoff positioning, you get a recipe for a back-and-forth affair, where both sides trade buckets well into the fourth quarter. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. New York Knicks versus Oklahoma City Thunder. Look, the defending champions have the best record in basketball at 58-16. They're playing at home inside the Paycom Center, and Vegas is giving them a healthy cushion of points for a reason. Nobody's going to argue with that logic on paper. Oklahoma City has steamrolled the NBA this season with the second-best defense in the entire league. They're holding opponents to just 107.7 points per game, and offensively they're right there at fifth, putting up 118.8 a night. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is averaging a cool 31.4 points per game, second in the league, and this team just rattled off a 12-game winning streak before Boston finally stopped the bleeding last week. So yeah, the Thunder are really, really good. But here's where the story shifts, and honestly, this is a pretty significant shift. Chet Holmgren will not be suiting up tonight. Hip contusion, out, done. And if you watch the first meeting between these two teams on March 5th in Madison Square Garden, you know exactly why that matters. Holmgren absolutely torched the Knicks that night. He went off for 28 points, grabbed 8 boards, and was unconscious from deep, knocking down 6 threes on 11 attempts. The Thunder won that game by just 3 points, 103-100, and it was Holmgren who was the difference, not SGA. Now remove that 7'1" unicorn from the equation tonight and ask yourself what changes. The rim protection disappears. The spacing thins out. The matchup nightmare that Karl Anthony Towns had to deal with just evaporates. Speaking of Towns, this is a guy putting up 20 points and nearly 12 rebounds per game while shooting 49.3% from the floor and 37% from three. He's the second best rebounder in the entire NBA, and tonight he gets to operate without the one defender who can actually match his versatility on the other end. Instead, it's going to be Isaiah Hartenstein and Jalen Williams trying to contain him. Competent players, sure, but neither one creates the kind of two-way havoc that Holmgren brings, and the defensive ceiling drops considerably. Then you look at Jalen Brunson. In that first meeting, Brunson dished out 15 assists, which is incredible, but he shot just 5 for 18 from the field. That's a 27.8% shooting night from a guy who averages 26.2 points per game on the season. You're not going to see that again. Brunson is too polished, too reliable, and too locked in right now to repeat a performance that cold. Since March 1st, he's averaged 24 points and 9.1 assists, and the Knicks have ripped off a 7-3 run in their last 10. And let's not forget, this New York team isn't some scrappy underdog just happy to be here. They're 48-26, third in the Eastern Conference. They won the NBA Cup back in December by knocking off the San Antonio Spurs, and this roster has real playoff infrastructure. OG Anunoby has been phenomenal over his last 15 games, averaging 19.1 points while drilling over 3 threes a night. Josh Hart is doing Josh Hart things since March with 13.8 points and 8.5 rebounds. Mikal Bridges contributes 14.7 points with nearly 4 assists and better than a steal per game across 74 appearances. Mike Brown's squad has legitimate depth and toughness, and they proved in the first matchup that they can hang with Oklahoma City's best, and that was with Holmgren going nuclear. Now on the Oklahoma City side, yes, Jalen Williams is back, and that's meaningful. But let's be real about where he is right now. This man has played just 26 games all season. He missed the first 19 games with wrist surgery recovery, came back, strained his hamstring in January, returned briefly, re-aggravated it in February, and then sat out another 15 consecutive games. Tonight marks only his 4th game since coming back. In his most recent outing, Friday against Chicago, he put up 18 points with 8 assists and 6 rebounds, which looks solid on the stat sheet. But he openly admitted that the biggest challenge isn't physical, it's mental. He said he's still working through the mental hurdles of trusting his body again. That's not a player operating at 100%, and everybody watching knows it. His shooting from 3 has cratered to a career-low 31.3% on the season. So you've got a depleted front court without Holmgren, a still ramping up Jalen Williams who hasn't played a full month of basketball all year, and now you're asking this team to cover a comfortable spread against a Knicks squad that lost to these same Thunder by only 3 points when Oklahoma City had all its weapons firing. The Knicks are built to compete in games like this. They have the size with Towns, the defensive versatility with Anunoby and Bridges, and the star power with Brunson to keep this thing tight. New York doesn't need to win outright, they just need to hang around, and honestly, this matchup profile screams exactly that. As our first pick for this matchup, the New York Knicks to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Now let's talk about what kind of scoring environment we're walking into tonight, because both of these teams can flat out put the ball in the basket. Oklahoma City ranks 5th in the league at 118.8 points per game. New York sits at 117, good for 10th. Combined, that's over 235 points per game on average between the two clubs, and that's before we even factor in the pace and context of this specific matchup. Go back to March 5th. That game produced 203 total points, and here's the kicker, neither team was particularly efficient. The Knicks shot just 42% from the field and a rough 28.6% from 3. The Thunder weren't exactly red hot either, converting just 45.2% overall. Both teams left offense on the table, and the game still cracked 200. Now imagine a version of tonight where Brunson doesn't go 5 for 18 again. Where the Knicks, who shoot 37.4% from 3 on the season, actually hit closer to their season average. Where OG Anunoby, who has been knocking down threes at an absurd rate over his last 15 games, gets his looks in a game with less rim protection on the other side. That's the ball game right there, because without Chet Holmgren patrolling the paint, the Thunder lose their best shot blocker and most impactful interior defender. Holmgren is averaging 17.9 points and 8.9 rebounds while shooting 55.2% from the floor, but his defensive presence, the way he changes shots at the rim, that's what suppresses scoring. Remove that and suddenly the lane opens up. Karl Anthony Towns should feast tonight. In the first meeting, he recorded a double-double, and that was against Holmgren. Without that resistance, Towns can attack the basket with more confidence, and the Knicks' interior offense could see a noticeable bump. On the flip side, the Thunder aren't going to slow down offensively just because Holmgren is out. SGA has averaged 29.7 points over his last 10 games. Jalen Williams is back and adding another scoring dimension. He put up 18 against Chicago on Friday. Jared McCain has been a revelation since the trade deadline, averaging 11.9 points off the bench on 47.7% shooting and an excellent 41.8% from deep. Isaiah Joe is connecting on 2.5 threes per game. The Thunder's offense doesn't rely on Holmgren the way their defense does, so the scoring output on their end should remain relatively stable. What changes is the defensive intensity, which is the variable that pushes totals higher. In their last 10 games, the Thunder have averaged 118.2 points scored while giving up 107.4, and the Knicks have averaged 115.8 scored over that same stretch. Both teams are in a rhythm where points are flowing. There's also a subtle but important motivational layer here. Oklahoma City is fighting to hold on to the #1 seed, with San Antonio just 2 games back. They can't afford to coast. The Knicks, meanwhile, are locked into a positioning battle in the East with Boston right above them at 49 and 24. Neither team is taking the foot off the gas, and when two teams with this kind of offensive firepower both play with urgency, baskets tend to pile up. This isn't a grind-it-out, 94-88 kind of matchup. Both squads push tempo, both have multiple creators who can generate offense independently, and the defensive downgrade for Oklahoma City tonight without Holmgren creates a runway for the Knicks to score at a higher clip than they did in the first meeting. The ingredients are all there. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Golden State Warriors versus Denver Nuggets. There's something almost poetic about a team rolling into Denver on fumes, held together by guys whose names most casual fans still can't spell, trying to survive a late-season gauntlet that has already chewed them up and spit them out. The Golden State Warriors sit at 36-38 on the year, clinging to the 10th spot in the Western Conference like a man hanging off a cliff by his fingernails. And tonight they walk into Ball Arena to face a Denver Nuggets squad sitting pretty at 47-28, riding a 5-game winning streak, and looking every bit like a team that remembers what it feels like to hold a championship trophy. Let's just be honest here, the Warriors are not the Warriors right now. That sounds weird to say, but it's the truth. Steph Curry hasn't played since January 30th. He's missed 24 straight games with runner's knee, officially been ruled out for tonight, and hasn't even been cleared for a 5-on-5 scrimmage yet. Steve Kerr made it clear they're not rushing the 38-year-old back, saying he needs a runway of actual games before returning, not just a one-off appearance for a play-in game. Jimmy Butler tore his ACL back on January 19th against his former team, the Miami Heat, had surgery on February 9th, and is done for the year. Moses Moody suffered a gruesome torn patellar tendon in Dallas earlier this week, and that's another season ender. Al Horford has been sidelined for roughly 2 weeks now with a calf injury. So when you add up the bodies, Golden State is missing their 4-time champion, their all-star wing, their emerging young scorer, and a veteran big man who was supposed to anchor the bench. That's not a rough patch, that's a full-blown roster crisis. Now, credit where it's absolutely due. The Warriors have somehow scraped together a 3-game winning streak heading into tonight. They knocked off Dallas in a wild one, squeezed past Brooklyn, and handled Washington at home. Brandon Podziemski has been a Warrior in the truest sense of the word, the only player to suit up for all 74 games this season, averaging a solid 13 points per night. Kristaps Porzingis, who came over from Atlanta in that Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield trade, has been putting up nearly 18 points a game in March, and he looked fantastic dropping 30 on Washington recently. Gaui Santos has stepped into a bigger role and delivered, and Gary Payton II is still doing his thing on both ends of the floor. But here's the thing, those 3 wins came against teams with losing records or teams that are actively trying to lose. Tonight is a completely different animal. Denver is playing with a level of fury right now that should genuinely scare people. In their last 10 games, the Nuggets are 8-2, averaging over 128 points per game while shooting above 51% from the field. Nikola Jokic is doing things that honestly don't feel real, putting up nearly 28 points, close to 13 rebounds, and around 11 assists per game this season. He's on the doorstep of averaging a triple-double for the 2nd straight year, which is absurd for a center or really for any human being playing basketball. Jamal Murray is having the best scoring season of his career, averaging about 25.5 points per game, and he just dropped 53 on Dallas earlier this week. 53. Let that sit for a second. He followed that up with another 30-plus point night against Utah on Friday. And honestly, when Murray gets into this kind of groove, the Nuggets become almost impossible to contain. The Nuggets are also getting healthier at the perfect time, with Peyton Watson back in the lineup this past week, giving Denver a fully healthy rotation for only the 2nd time since November. No injuries listed on their report tonight. 0. And then you factor in the building itself. Ball Arena sits a mile above sea level, and every visiting team in the history of this league talks about how the altitude just sucks the life out of you in the second half. The Warriors, already playing with a paper-thin and battered rotation, have to survive 48 minutes in that thin air against a team whose offense is cooking at historic levels right now. Golden State is 0-7 in their last 7 road trips to Denver. 0-7. That's not a trend, that's a tradition at this point. They're also 2-6 in their last 8 road games overall, and while they've been scrappy this month, the quality of opponent tonight goes up about 5 levels. David Adelman, Denver's head coach in his first full season after replacing Michael Malone, actually called out his own team's energy after the Utah game, saying they need to come out with more purpose from the opening tip. When a coach publicly challenges a squad that's already won 5 straight, that usually means they're about to play with a nasty edge. Denver is fighting for seeding 2, sitting 4th in the West, just a game and a half behind the Lakers for the 3rd spot, with 9 of their final 12 games at home. Everything is lined up for the Nuggets to take care of business here, and take care of it convincingly. As our first pick for this matchup, the Denver Nuggets to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. When you look at what these two teams have been doing to game totals recently, a pretty clear picture starts to form. Golden State's defense, if you can even call it that right now, has been giving up over 120 points per game across their last 10 contests. That number sits near the bottom of the league, and honestly, it makes perfect sense when you think about who's not on the floor. Butler was their best perimeter defender. Moody was developing into a reliable two-way wing. Curry's gravity alone, just the act of being out there, changes how opposing offenses operate. Without all of those guys, the Warriors are surrendering buckets in waves, especially on the road where they can't lean on a home crowd to generate energy on the defensive end. Denver, on the other hand, is an offensive machine right now, and the recent home game totals tell you everything you need to know. Against Dallas on Wednesday, the two teams combined for 277 points. Against Utah on Friday night, it was 264. Against Phoenix earlier in the week, 248. Against Portland, 240. Those aren't small numbers. Those are games where both squads are putting the ball in the basket at a ridiculous clip, and the Nuggets are the common thread in every single one of them. Jokic's passing creates so many easy looks for everyone around him that Denver's offensive efficiency stays absurdly high regardless of who they're playing. And when Murray is locked in the way he's been lately, the Nuggets' ceiling becomes nearly impossible for any defense to reach. The Warriors themselves have been involved in some high-scoring affairs too, which honestly makes them part of the problem from a totals perspective. The over has hit in 8 of Golden State's last 11 games. Narrow it down to Western Conference opponents, and the over has come in on 9 of their last 12. Against Northwest Division teams specifically, the over has cashed in 14 of their last 20. Those numbers aren't coincidental. They reflect a team that plays at a pace but simply cannot get enough stops to keep the total under control. Denver's home games have been going over at a similar rate, with the over hitting in 4 of their last 5. Here's the part that honestly ties everything together. A thin Warriors rotation means heavy minutes for the guys who are available. Heavy minutes at altitude in Denver means tired legs in the 4th quarter. Tired legs mean breakdowns on defense, which means easy baskets for a Nuggets team that already creates open looks better than almost anyone in the league. Denver has actually shown a pattern of slow starts this month, falling behind early before surging back in the second half, and those comeback runs tend to inflate the total because both teams are scoring at a high rate for different reasons. Denver scores because they're talented. Golden State scores because the Nuggets coast just enough early to let opponents hang around before the floodgates open. When both sides are contributing to the scoreboard like that, the final number tends to land in a place that makes overbettors very happy. And in this building, with this matchup, with these circumstances, there is every reason to believe that both teams will put up points tonight. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.